Due to the nature of my childhood and what I experienced growing up as a child, having a very traumatic childhood with my alcoholic father, who was very loving to me when I first arrived on the scene, and then became a monster to me. Through my formative years of about 3 to 4 to about 9 years old, became a monster to me, and my experience of what I went through as a child in that formative time, my resonance took me to a place, and the degree of my openness to the nature of reality and multidimensional existence was like a beacon. And I feel now, looking back at my life experience and understanding the nature of reality, and also my own consciousness occupying other bodies in my multidimensional existence, that I brought over from another lifetime, my last lifetime, where I've been told by several people, some psychic, others not psychic, that I was a Buddhist monk in my last lifetime. And you think so? And I look at it now as not being my a previous lifetime. I look at it being as a lifetime happening in this moment. Everything's happening all at once. So I don't look at it as a past life, I look at it as a life, right? Because there is no past, there's no present, there's no past, there's no future, there's only the present moment. So for me, the idea of, to get my head around the idea, really, to understand this, now looking back at the situation what I went through in regards to these experiences I'm going to relate to you, I understand the nature of what happened here and why I experienced what I experienced. Now, due to my resonance as a child and my openness to the levels of reality beyond the five senses, it was only natural that I was going to be haunted. I was going to be picked on. I was going to be open to experiencing astral entities that would come to me throughout my adolescence and I'm actually getting chills saying this, but astral entities that would come to me and would carry over from my previous lifetime, which I discovered more about, and I'll talk more about in this video too, that carried over from my previous lifetime and came to feed off my energetic resonance when I was in fear, in a state of fear. My first recall of an experience where I had with an astral entity that came to me and fed off me was when I was about 7 years old, in my cousin's place in Darren, in Green Bay in Auckland, where I woke up. My father's family, it was Samoan Chinese, Scottish Māori, so they used to come together once a week, have big card playing, music, guitars out, playing instruments, singing, get horrendously pissed, drunk, and then pass out. All the cousins would sleep in each other's beds, top and tail, or on the floor. All the uncles and aunties would crash out everywhere, and everyone would just pass out, often drunk. And my cousin's place had a garage light, a spotlight coming from the garage into the kitchen area, and there was 2 sliding doors one into the hallway, and my cousin Darren's door was open. We were top and tailing, so I was at the tail, he was at the top, and I was sleeping with my head towards the door facing towards the kitchen, and the sliding door was open, and his door was open, and I remember waking up, sleep paralysis, couldn't move, and there was a being, a two-dimensional being, I say two-dimensional now in my mind, it was standing there, black outline, just standing there, arms at the side, staring at me. I could see the light from the back of from the garage coming through the hallway, through the kitchen into the hallway, and this being was blocking the light, and the light was basically absorbed by the being's presence, and it was just staring at me. I couldn't move. I was paralyzed, and the fear that I was generating, I could feel this creature feeding off it. and I couldn't move. I tried my best to move my toes to try and kick my cousin and wake my cousin up, wake him up. I couldn't move. Eventually, I got my hands to move. I pulled the duvet over my head and kicked my cousin awake. And when he woke up, I said, "There's someone in the house." It was my first feeling. There's someone in the house. I woke up all the cousins, all the uncles and aunties, and we searched the house and found no one. I told them what happened, and my father pulled me aside, hit me, and said to me, "There's no such thing as ghosts." And I don't remember any more experiences with shadow beings after that after that experience. But many years later, when I went to Otago University in Dunedin, when I hit about 19 years old, I began to have the most incredibly lucid sexual dreams. Like, unbelievably lucid and so visceral, so real sexual dreams. And I have an ejaculation, and I call them wet dreams. I have this ejaculation during these dreams. Like, some people might say, "Oh, it's natural, your hormones are racing, you're at university, yada yada yada." But no, it was always on the same day, every month. I have these crazy, wild, incredible sexual dreams, like the best sex I could ever imagine in these dreams. And I always wake up at the point of ejaculation. Wake up. And one night I woke up and I felt pressure on my actual groin area, like something was sitting on me. I felt it get off me in my bed. I couldn't see it. I felt it get off me and move to the side as I ejaculated. And that scared the fucking shit out of me. And right away I thought to myself, I've got to go and see someone about this. What the fuck is going on? It's every month on the same day having this experience. What's going on? So I went and saw a psychic in Dunedin, a medium. She told me that, okay, in your last lifetime you were a Buddhist monk. You took on a vow of celibacy. But what you did during one of your meditations is you went into an astral level, and in that astral level you met an overlord who said to you, right, I see that you've taken this vow, you can't have sex and you're not going to have sex. But here's the deal, I will give you the most insane sexual dreams, the most incredible sexual dreams you could ever imagine, the best sex you could ever have, physical or non-physical. But you give me your life force. Through an ejaculation. You give me your life force. So in that lifetime, in that life, I wrote a contract with this overlord, she said. And in this life, what I had to do was to go into a meditative state, go and meet the astral overlord in whatever way I perceive this astral overlord to look like. Ask for the contract, take the contract, rip it up and burn it in a purple flame. And then the whole thing would be over. It would be over. So what did I do? I did just that. I meditated, I visualized the contract in my hand, I tore it up, I burned it in a purple flame and said, no more thank you. And the sexual dreams and the succubus visitations stopped. And that was probably the most terrifying part of that experience, actually waking up and feeling something jumping off me, literally on the bed, jumping off, impression on the bed mattress, and then getting onto the floor. Fucking terrifying. Really quite scary to have that experience where I had that and woke up from it and understood it. So that was my understanding of my connection on that level, that darkness that brought me into that place. Due to the nature of my trauma and the being that I was resonating, I was only a beacon for these experiences. Having these experiences in my life because of the nature of who I was and what I was experiencing and what I was putting out into the multiverse of existence. But this was a carryover from my lifetime that I hadn't finished the contract with. And due to the nature of my resonance and the fact that at the time I had no real understanding of this, but I was occupying my upper chakra system. The trauma that I experienced as a child and through my adolescence and my teenage years had pushed me into my higher centers. Not my heart center, but my higher centers, my higher levels of perception from my throat chakra up, really. I I wasn't grounded in my body at all. So therefore I had a vacancy sign really over my lower chakra system. So it was only natural for me to actually be in a situation where I was open to being possessed due to the nature of me not embodying my body. And me resonating this at the same time, this feeling of trauma, this feeling of being a victim in my life, was only natural for these beings at other levels of existence to go like, there's a big neon sign saying, vacancy, right here, vacancy. And it would be a few years after I had actually torn this contract up that I had my possession experience, and I mean possession experience. I was living I moved into a flat in the Octagon in Dunedin, above Bacchus Wine Bar, with my friend Scott, with two guys, Chris and John. And the rooms were cheap, and it was the most amazing flat, and I loved this. It was probably the best place I lived in Dunedin. It was such an awesome building, an amazing, amazing location, right in the middle of the Octagon. I love it, Stewart Street. When I first moved into this place, my partner at the time, Inez, I was dating this woman, Inez, who I discovered later was incredibly psychic, clairvoyant, claircognizant, clairaudient. Her and I were dating. I was working in a bar called Crossroads. One of the bar people there. And one night I came home, and before I had this experience, when I came home that night, actually, get back to the beginning here, the toilet used to flush all the time. The toilet used to flush all the time, every night, flushing. And I was like, something's wrong with the plumbing here, man, what's going on? To which one of the flatmates who I moved into the house with said, oh, the house is haunted. And I was like, what the fuck have I got myself into here? And it wasn't. He said, don't worry about it, like, we think it's haunted, but it's nothing malevolent, it's just the toilet flushes all the time. What the fuck? So that's what actually was a metaphor for what was going to happen next, really, I think. So we were on a block on Moriah Place, and that was Stewart Street, where the building was part of a block of buildings, and we always wanted to get onto the roof and see if all the blocks, which all the buildings are joined up, so we could walk around the buildings, right, on the rooftops. But we were all too chicken shit. We'd open up the attic, entranceway into the attic, open it up, and just bring it down because it was terrifying, because we felt this presence in there. And I was like, I'm not going to go in there, I'm all good. I'm not going to go on the roof. I can't get up there, I'm too scared. But one night, I came home from work quite late, and I was on the phone. This is back in the day. We had landlines with really long cables to the landline, to the plug in the socket, to the the landline plugged into the wall. And I was on the phone to Inez. It must have been 2:33 in the morning. I was walking around quietly, whispering into the phone in the hallway where I lived. This building was built in the 1870s, very old. Dunedin back in the 1890s was part of it. Was the biggest city in this country, Aotearoa, New Zealand. And there was a gold rush in central Otago, which was about 3 hours as far as the car drives, but back then it would have been a day's travel inland by coach or by horse, at least a day or two travel inland, where they had gold fields in there and gold was discovered. And Dunedin was like a wild west town, like Deadwood, I guess, from that HBO TV series. And this building was quite old. So I was on the phone to Inez, and our front door for the third story up, down to the floor, was this big thick oak door. And I was on the phone to Inez, whispering quietly, thinking all my flatmates are at home and in bed asleep. I'm just talking to her quietly. I saw her at the bar an hour ago, and we're talking away on the phone. And I'm walking back and forth in the corridor, and I walk towards the front door, and as I get just next to the front door, there's a boom slam on the door. Someone's kicked the door, and I am literally jumping out of my fucking skin. What the fuck? And I think right away, my friend Scott, who lives in the room next to where I'm talking to, he's just come home from the home staff from his job. He's a waiter. He's probably heard me on the phone. He's playing a fucking trick on me. I open up the door right away, like literally right away. I open up the door to see where he is. He's not there. There's no one there. I look outside, down the stairwell. There's no one. No one's running down the stairwell to get out. I put the phone down, go down to Bacchus Wine Bar, the floor below me, look into the wine bar. It's closed. It closes at midnight. It closed 3 hours ago. There's no one in there. I go downstairs to the street, open up the door, thinking Scott must have run out the door. How the fuck he did that, I have no idea, but he's out the door, he's on the street somewhere, running off somewhere. open up the door to Lower Stewart Street, Dunedin, 3:30 in the morning. There's no one around. There's no one there I can see anyway. I go up the alleyway next to the house, go up the alleyway, look around, there's no one there. There's no one there, there's just no one there. I go back upstairs again, pick up the phone, and Ines says to me, I said, Ines, are you there, are you there? I thought she'd gone, because I've been gone so long. I said, Ines, are you there, are you there? And she said to me, I'll never forget this, she said, you've got to get the fuck out of that house. And I was just like, what? She said, you've got to get the fuck out of that house. Eventually our conversation finished, and not long after that we broke up. We were no longer together, and the toilet flushing sort of stopped. It just stopped one night. It just stopped happening. I thought, yeah, whatever it was is gone, you know, it's out of here. It's got bored, it's got to go somewhere else. Cut to the summer, the year after, the end of the summer. It was like a late summer day, early autumn day. It was like 28 degrees. It was a freak day, really hot day in Dunedin. My friend Scott wanted to go on a double date with a couple of girls, one from Queenstown, one from Dunedin, Pip and Orna. And we go to a movie. I don't know why. We went across the road to the Metropolis Cinema behind the Otago Dunedin Town Hall downstairs. It's a beautiful little art house cinema. We go to the cinema. We see a movie called Louie Louie, and it's the worst date movie you could ever imagine, about a gardener who murders a young boy. And then the boy goes missing, and his parents hire a PI to try and find their son, who they believe has run off to Paris. The PI finds this kid who would look like the son would look like if he became a young man. Brings the young boy back to the house, who pretends to be the son, much to the gardener's horror. And the young boy finds out that the gardener had murdered the young child and was buried in the garden. Terrible date movie. It's shocking, like really bad. So we watched this movie, and we're just like really not in a good place after the movie. We think, fuck, oh my god, let's go home. So we went back to the flat, which is across the other side of the road, literally across the other side of the road. Crossed the Octagon, back to the flat, and it's still really hot, super hot, like super hot. And their house, the flat we're in, it retains the heat, so it's a really warm and cozy location, a cozy flat. We walk upstairs. I'm the last person to walk in the door. Everyone says, fuck, it's hot in here, as they walk in. I walk in last, and when I walk in, to me it feels like a freezer. A freezer. It is so cold. I'm breathing out. Yeah, mate, it's freezing in here. And I'm like, are you kidding me? It's super warm. Now, years later, I would understand that this is when a spirit or an entity removes all of the electromagnetic energy out of the room and cools it down in order for it to make itself present in that room, and often with malevolence, anger. Now, I walk into the flat, and we had a lounge with no furniture basically in it apart from a couch. And the girls and Scott walked in there, and I walked in and, hey guys, who wants a cup of tea? And like, yeah, I'll have a cup of tea. Yeah, sounds great. Yeah, cool. I thought, fucking, that's probably the best thing I can do right now, make a cup of tea for everyone, because that movie destroyed us. So I walk down the corridor, and all the walls have been moved a few times in this flat, because it's quite an old flat, and the walls have been moved, and so it's all been repositioned and stuff. I walk down the corridor, big wide corridor, down to a skinny corridor which goes to a toilet, a laundry, and a kitchen on the right hand side. And I walk down the corridor towards the kitchen. I turn right into the kitchen, and there's a window facing towards a fire escape. And there's a very skinny little kitchen, and I turned around, looked straight ahead, and what I saw was a beach ball sized, pulsing, clear ball of transparent energy, just hovering in the midair. I saw it and went, what the fuck is that? And the moment I saw it, it sped across the room, through the kitchen, struck me in the stomach like a punch to the guts. I went flying back against the wall, off my feet, smashed into the wall behind me, and I watched this ball press itself into my body. I literally press itself into my solar plexus and sacral chakra area, push itself into my body, and then was in my body, and I'm sitting there on the floor going, what the fuck? The moment it happened, it was in my body, I began to feel nauseous. I crawl on the floor to the toilet, which is down the end of the corridor. On my hands and knees, I throw up 3 times, literally throw up on the toilet 3 times, and then my body just gets up. My body gets up, my awareness is being supplanted by something else. My body is no longer my body. Something has taken over my body. I'm no longer in charge of it. I'm a observer of what's going on in that moment. I'm observing my body doing actions, doing things. I go into the kitchen and start making this cup of tea for all of us, for three of us actually. I don't make a cup of tea for myself. For the three of them, and I can feel this volcanic anger rising up through my body that isn't mine. This volcanic fury rising up through my body, just passing through my body, emotional content. My body walks into, I'm talking about the third person now, my body walks into the lounge, puts the tea in front of Scott, Orna and Pip, and then paces up and down in the lounge. I'm completely lucidly aware of this, what's going on. I've got no control of my body whatsoever. I can't speak. I'm entombed in my own body. I'm a silent witness to what's going on. Pacing up and down in the lounge, and then my body turns to Scott, and the words that come out my mouth as I scowl at him is, "Can you not hear me? I'm talking to you with fucking telepathy." When he asks me, "What the fuck is wrong with you?" Because my mood had changed so quickly, right? Next moment, Pip, Scott, and Orna get up and fucking leave the couch, leave the lounge, and go downstairs and leave the house. Now, for about an hour or so, I was in the lounge with no ability to be able to control what was happening. Now, I was imprisoned in my own body while this consciousness had taken over my body. Scott walked back in again about an hour and a half later, saw me, he was biting his nails in the doorway. He said to me, "What the fuck is wrong?" And I managed to get out the words. I bleated out the words, "Call Inez." Inez was a hairstylist at a place called Why Not here in Dunedin. And he called her up and said, "Something's wrong with fucking Far. You've got to, I don't know what's going on." He said something wrong with him. She came around to the house after work, and I was still pacing in the lounge. She walked into the hallway, up to the door frame of the door jamb of the door, and stood there and looked at me. And I was scowling at her. My body was scowling, still full of this fury and anger. I had no idea what was going on. None whatsoever. I knew something had happened. This thing had entered into my body. She walked into the lounge, put a hand on my head, a hand on my lower back, and began to walk me around in a spiral motion. She walked me out of the lounge into my room next door to the lounge, spiraled me around in my bed. I remember getting dizzy and feeling like I was going to fall over. She spiraled me around in my bed, spiraled me around and around, and then brought me down into her lap, my head into her lap, and began to stroke my head, and I passed out, went to sleep. Like that, went to sleep. I woke up feeling like my body had been beaten up from the inside out. It was the most unusual and painful experience. It was bizarre, so bizarre. And then she quietly whispered to me, "Now do you fucking think you gotta get out of this fucking house?" And I was just like, what the fuck happened? To which she told me, "You've been possessed. You've been possessed." Then she told me that she was going to cleanse the house, and we all had to get out of there. So days later, we made it. All the guys, we went to John and Chris. We used to work day shifts, and me and Scott worked nights. So me and Scott got out of the house. Inez came into the house and cleansed it, completely cleansed it. And then she took us into the lounge. She sat us down, and she said to us, "Okay, I'm going to tell you what I experienced and what happened here." And me and Scott were like going, "Okay." And John and Chris were a bit skeptical, but me and Scott were like, "Alright, cool, go for it." She told us that back in the 1890s, that this flat that we were in was a brothel. In Scott's room, there was a sex worker working in Scott's room that had a customer that would come from the gold fields in Central Otago back to see her and would be one of her clientele, but he fell in love with her. He came back, found her with another client, busted into the room, shot her, shot him, shot himself, and she was still here, and she felt like it was her place. This place belonged to her. It was her place, and we were intruders in her place. and she was mad that we were there in her place. In her place. And me and Scott, our drawers were on the floor. John and Chris were like, oh yeah, whatever, fucking another bullshit. I went down to the down to the Otago Museum, went through the microfilm, the old, the screen with the little, you put the little microphone on, went through the whole thing, to go through the papers in the 1890s to try and find out if there was a murder down there. And lo and behold, I found out the property that I was in, a sex worker had been murdered. Two other people have been murdered in that room, in Scott's room. In Scott's room, where he lived, where he slept. Now, we got onto the roof after that. We got onto the roof. We went through the attic and felt safe to go through everything. The whole energy of the house had changed completely. We had some incredible experiences there. Incredible experiences there. Now, after that experience of me having that possession and being cleared of it, my first inclination was I began to hear this voice in my head. I began to hear this voice in my head telling me stories, tales. In 2 weeks, 3 weeks, I filled up two textbooks full of short stories. They just came out. I couldn't stop myself. I had to write. And this was Lord Buford Somerset, a part of myself, multidimensional self, who came in to assist me in my personal development to remove the psychic residue of the experience that I had in that flat, to help me to find a cathartic way to remove the psychic residue of the possession state, to write about it in a way that would get rid of it out of my body, my resonance, my being. And those 2 textbooks filled up. When I filled them up, I felt so much better. I felt grounded, I felt clear, I felt like I was in a place of able to move forward with my life and feel like, well, that was an experience, but I don't want to experience it ever again. But I still wasn't grounded in my lower chakra system at all. But I was able to remove the psychic residue, and Lord Buford Somerset helped me to do that. And one of the short stories I wrote in that collection of short stories was set in that flat. Horror macabre short story that I wrote. Quite a gnarly one. And also kind of came to the place where I understood what she wanted to do when she was in my body. But I'll get to that another time. If you read the short story, you'll see what I mean, what she wanted to do. Because she was quite clear about what she wanted to do with my body and what she wanted to do, the tenants living in the building. But when we moved out of the flat eventually, I went to travel up. I went to Motueka to pick apples. And I moved to Auckland after that in 1994, 95. One of my workmates, Chucky, moved into the flat. I told her about this flat, told her where it was, and she moved into it. She loved it. She used to work at Les Mills and work at the bar at nights. Les Mills, which is a fitness club, and work at the bar at nights at Crossroads, where I used to work. I got a letter from her. Like, this was back in the day when we used to write letters to each other. I got a letter from her saying, hey, listen, did you ever have a problem with the toilet flushing all the time at night? And I was like, oh my fucking God. I called her up and said, dude, you got to go to that flat. Told her the whole story. She didn't believe a word of it. I said, you got to go to that flat. You got to go to that flat. She didn't believe a word of it. And what happened next was crazy. She called me up about 2 months later. The landlord of this property had been cheating on his wife for about 6 years, and he owned properties all over Dunedin. All over Dunedin. And of all the places this could happen, in all the rooms this could happen, she told me that she came home one time from work, and her flatmates were all in Scott's old room. And on the walls, spray painted in red spray paint, were the words, you cheating cunt. On the walls, in red, in the room where Scott used to sleep, where she was murdered almost 100 years, or basically 100 years ago. All over those walls, of all the places that his wife could have, who discovered that he'd been cheating on her, of all the places, of all the rooms, and all the properties he owned in Eden, she did it in that room. And she wrote that in red. And I was just like, you can't make this shit up. It fucking like, Chucky, are you gonna murder that place now? I don't know if she did or didn't. I imagine she did at some point, but I haven't heard back from her, so I don't know what happened. But I was just like, holy fucking shitballs. Incredible, insane experience. Truly insane. But my possession experiences after that were not full blown. I had attachments attached to me in the Golden Bay. In a video I've told already about a story that I had at Birds Clearing at a party where I had some psychic astral parasites attach themselves to me, and me diving into Pupu Springs cleared them. But it would be years later before I began to understand the nature of what I needed to do in regards to ground myself through my healing processes and do my shadow work to make sure that I was occupying and embodying my body and there were no vacancy signs over my lower chakra system. So I wasn't going to take on any entities. And I was very careful in that sense when I began that process, but I was also careless in my sexual experiences, because through sex without love, energetically, from my experience and my understanding, is that you are basically a big beacon for astral entities to come and to attach themselves to you and to make you into batteries to feed off your energy, your orgasmic energy, your ejaculation energy, if you are open to the experience and not grounded in your body and not come from a place of love and connection. And thankfully, in my memory, I can't think of any experiences that I've had. I've had experiences of beings attaching themselves to me in that way. But I have had many friends who've had stories who have told me about entity attachments during sex with their partners or the people they're having sex with have shifted and changed in their persona, in their way that they look, their actions, their attitudes. And I really feel as though that is also a can of worms that I'm not going to open up right now. But this experience for me was like, holy shit, next level in regards to the possession experience and what happened afterwards. But from there, my wheel turned, and thanks to Lord Buford Somerset and removing that psychic residue of that energy, I began my personal development process and my conscious awakening process in earnest, in a way it brought me back into a place of balance and healing. And my healing journey began proper after that. And the books that I wrote, the first book I wrote, The Darkness Holds Sway, is basically a conglomeration of some of those short stories that I wrote after being possessed. But that cathartic experience really helped me to move and shift my energy out of that darkness and begin my healing process in earnest. Thanks for watching. I truly appreciate it. Mā te ua. I'll see you again soon.